Now this is a story about Adrian and Adam. Went to watch horror movies and returned to talk about them.
Wow.
What movie?
Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead.
Wow. Wow, I like your little cover there.
Thank you. I thought it up on myself.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Weird Al 2 is me.
I like that. Weird Al the sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah, great song by the Misfits. Not at all associated with this movie, right?
I think it's very much associated with this movie.
Inspired by the movie, but not. It was never associated directly with the movie, correct?
I mean, what do you mean?
Because when did that song come out?
Like in the 90s. When did it came out after this movie? If that's what you're wondering.
Right. Okay. That's what I mean. Pet Sematary by the Ramones was made for the movie Pet Sematary. You with me?
I see. Yeah.
I was wondering if there was any but no. They're just fans of the
They
movie.
just love this movie. Yeah. And you know who else loves this movie?
You.
Me. I love this movie.
I know you do.
Oh man, I kind of I like this movie pretty well. I really like this movie going into it, but rewatching it, that love is rekindled in me. I really like.
That's good.
And I've seen this movie quite a few times, and I've shown it to people, and I learned that this is your first time seeing this movie, which I was surprised about. So, first impressions from you, what are they?
I think this is what happens when an incredibly talented special effects creator like Stan Winston, who of course, worked on Aliens, worked on the Predator movies, worked on The Thing, Jurassic Park, super talented guy. This is what happens when he directs a movie. The creature is awesome.
Yeah, isn't it?
The creature is awesome.
I keep wanting... They're not really comparable, but I keep wanting to compare this movie to Killer Clowns from Outer Space by the Chiodo brothers, because they both are from these directors that really have their base in practical effects, and then they went on to make a B-movie passion project that gained a huge cult following. This movie has a little bit more money than Killer Clowns did, yet a little bit less effects. Then again, the Chiodo brothers were, inhumanly resourceful. I don't know how they made that movie with that budget.
Yeah.
But this movie, I believe it did make money, but it wasn't, hugely financially successful, quite like Killer Clowns is, or was. And I think
this movie, it barely made the money back.
I
But
know.
It did make some money back, to be fair.
And this cult following that has kind of been kept alive for a while, I think that's probably continued giving dividends back to everybody who worked on this, hopefully.
I hope so.
It's lucrative in a way. The name has weight and means stuff. But I'm not seeing any, new Pumpkinhead stuff. I think there was talk of, a remake at one point or another, but that never happened. And as of right now, there's no new Pumpkinhead anything happening. And that's kind of surprising to me, because this is known. It's known enough to have a Misfits song about it, People like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I didn't realize this movie had such a cult following until I started researching it for this. I also read that they were working on Paramount Players were working on a reboot script. I haven't seen any updates past 2021. That was the last update I could find. And this is the kind of movie I could see getting lost, a reboot for this particular franchise, because it's popular, it's got a cult following, but would it kill at the box office? I don't know. I mean, they're rebooting Toxic Avenger right now, and that seems kind of odd to me and niche. So I don't see why they couldn't get this thing off the ground, but maybe one day it'll come. Who knows?
Yeah. Even if they did reboot it, though, I think the biggest draw to me about this movie is how much heart it has. And I don't know if any reboot of this movie could have that same passion that this movie has.
No.
Hope they would. I know everybody who worked on this movie, like everyone who worked on this movie, really cared about it and really had fun making it. Like, I know Lance Hendrickson, who plays Ed Harley, the main character, really got into this role. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where he's washing his son's hands, and he says to his son, my great-grandmother used to do this to me. And I later learned that he asked the director to include that scene and that line himself because his actual great-grandmother really did do that. So I look at that scene as like not Ed Harley saying that, but Lance Hendrickson himself is saying that because he wanted to feel more emotionally involved in the character.
He also says in that scene, he goes, the skin on her hands was as thin as paper, and it felt so good. That's what he said.
Yeah, and I guess Lance Hendrickson in his mind was really thinking that in that scene.
Wow. That's fascinating and a little weirder.
It is.
And I'm glad I know that now.
It is, but I think it like shows some of the passion that this man had for this movie. He really wanted to be in this movie and wanted it to be a good movie. And I think you can tell because he's acting his heart out. I've seen him in a lot of other stuff, you know, like Aliens and whatever. But
he goes hard in this movie.
Yeah, I think I've never seen him act like this.
No, I agree. There were several moments in this movie where I'm watching Lance Henriksen on the screen, and hear me out here. It's like Nick Cage level choice making in this movie. Some of the stuff he does. He makes some big choices. He'll often go for the big reaction, the loud reaction, the big face, the scream, the gritting his teeth, especially in the beginning. There's a lot of gritting his teeth. And I don't know. I kept going back and forth because I like Lance Henriksen and everything I've seen him in prior to this. And I was like, man, is he bad? I don't think he is. I think it's a good performance. I think a lot of the ensemble in this movie is pretty bad, and so they don't really help elevate his work at all. But nonetheless, man, yeah, he gives a really interesting performance here. And I guess we could say it's from the heart, you know, judging by what you're saying. It was cool. It's cool to see him in a role like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad he kind of has this, you know, horror root that he kind of went back to for this movie. You know, if this is going to be like the movie that you want to sink your heart and soul into and act it off, I'm glad he's one for the fans, one for the horror heads. But I think his acting looks even better compared to the rest of the cast. He stands out in this. And I, you know, not that the rest of the cast is terrible, but it is a horror movie that has a cast of teens who are going to get picked off like any slasher, any horror movie. And they're not going to be very important characters. They're kind of cannon fodder, half of them. Half of them don't have many lines at all. They're kind of just there to be killed, so it's, you know, it's whatever. And they're not terrible. You know, I've seen way worse acting in way better funded movies. But stands out. He stands out for me.
Yeah, no. He's an obvious standout. The little boy that plays the son, he's pretty good as far as child actors go. You know, of course, the basic plot of this movie, and we can get further into it soon, but a man, he's definitely a loner, a recluse. He lives out in the boondocks, presumably. Do they ever say where it's at? It's kind of West Virginia-esque.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
definitely
the
Appalachia.
Swamp. It's the swamp. Yeah. That's whatever.
Yeah, it's Appalachia for sure. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating setup. There's a lot of unknown. The beginning, we see a young boy looking out the window and watching in horror as a creature that we assume is the titular Pumpkinhead kills a man. And his father and his mother refuse to let this man inside for refuge. We, of course, are led to assume that this young boy in the cold open is Lance Henriksen's character. And the reason he finds Pumpkinhead is it's a ritual, a spell of sorts where a person that wants revenge participates in this ritual, which again we can get into, and Pumpkinhead goes and kills for you. Okay, but there is a price. And, you know, he loses his young boy, and for that to work, there has to be a relationship there that we care about. And to be honest, there's not a lot of killing outside of the cold open for what felt like quite a while in this movie. And it's because they were building that relationship between the boy and his father. And I thought that was some pretty strong storytelling. And usually I just want to see the monster. I want to see the gore. I didn't mind it here. I thought the boy and Lance Henriksen did a really good job building that up. You know, kudos to the director for working with that young kid and making that connection. I thought it was actually quite believable and cute.
Oh, and how adorable is this kid? Oh, man. Best way to up the ante on the heartstrings is make the kid the most adorable child in the world. And he is. When he dies, they use his body a lot after he dies. And I think there's kind of quite a few scenes where you can just see him like twitch a little or breathe a little, you know? He's not so great at laying still. But other than that, he's great and cute.
Yeah, in the beginning, he's constantly blinking.
I know, yeah. He's just
But, whatever. Yeah, it's hard to do. I don't blame him. It's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't distract very much at all, I don't think. But yeah, I guess kind of like you said, we'll maybe get into the plot a little. This movie's an hour and a half. It's not a very long movie at all. But they spend a good 15 minutes at least. It doesn't feel bloated. It feels very like a tasteful amount of time, but they spend a good portion of the start of this movie just building up the relationship between Ed Harley and his son. And then the inciting incident happens. These city folk, out-of-towners show up. I'm not going to name them all. There's kind of a lot of them. But they're like these, the teenagers who will be slashed in this slasher movie. And they're there with the dirt bikes because they're going to drive around and be rowdy and reckless and have a good time. I believe it's Joel is this like one guy who's the brother of this other character who's like the biggest asshole in the world right out the gate. I think it was really funny. This is a pretty humorless movie. It's very dramatic, very sad, kind of contemplative. But the funniest part of this movie is they're introducing these characters and they show 4 people in this car. They're all friends. There's this guy and who you assume is maybe his girlfriend. And they're talking about how he's brought his brother along. And he's like, oh, come on. Once you get to know him, he's a great guy. Hard cut to another car. And it's Joel and he's with his girlfriend and he says something like, beer me or something. Like, it's just an asshole right out the gate. And that was funny to me. And it was a great introduction of like, this is the character. He's an asshole. Like really, really succinct.
Yeah, he like chugs a beer, throws it out the window.
Yeah, like first 2 seconds you see.
Cuts off his friends on the road.
Yeah.
He's driving a sports car. He is dressed entirely differently. Also, he's like he's the only one wearing a leather jacket. But yeah, he's just clearly the ass in this situation. And you pretty much know immediately this guy's going to do something that's going to cause the movie to ensue. And sure enough, he does. They're riding dirt bikes. To his credit, it's an accident, right? They stop at Ed's store. They want beer, of course. They don't sell beer there. Ed is too stand up for that. Ed does leave his son, his very young son, alone at the general store for whatever reason. I was a little critical of that because you are inviting an accident to happen if you're leaving a young kid like that at the store by themselves. But whatever. These city folk, they're irresponsible. They take out their dirt bikes. They start ripping into the dirt, doing their thing. And sure enough, the kid has a dog named Gypsy that he loves. Gypsy gets off the leash, runs out into the field where they're riding dirt bikes. The little boy is so distraught. He's worried about his dog. He runs out, and you know what happens. Joel, who also just happens to be an ass, accidentally kills this kid. That's not where Joel shows his true colors just yet. Right? He's obviously upset he hit the kid. It's the fact that he chooses to run that really seals the deal here. Instead of staying, trying to get help, doing anything for the boy, he's worried about himself and wants them to leave.
Yeah, I am a little more... I'm forgiving of him leaving his son, I think, because the reason he left was he was going to go run back up to his house and get the seed he forgot to bring down to the store. And that's a pretty, 5-minute thing. He's a single parent in a very impoverished part of the world. And I can understand how someone in this situation, living this life, would maybe leave their son for a few minutes. I can see how us living in this suburb or, in a city or wherever, that might seem a little crazy. But to this other kind of way of life, that's just kind of how it has to be.
That's a good point.
When these kids show up, they go to get gas at Ed's station at this general goods store he has. And I really like kind of how this is the typical really tropey thing that they even make fun of in movies like Cabin in the Woods, where before you get to the place where the slashing will happen, where we meet the killer, Camp Crystal Lake, Cabin in the Woods, X whatever. They always stop at a creepy gas station where some hillbilly local gives them the evil eye and maybe some cryptic warning or some unfriendly thing before they go to the place where they're going to get killed. That's such a trope. And here in this movie, the perspective is shifted and the main character is that guy running the gas station. And these kids are not the antagonists, but they're the ones kind of spawning all the evil of this movie. These movies kind of treat these characters like, you know, just some inbred hillbilly. And that is how these characters from out of town treat the people in this movie that we are seeing and empathizing with as the audience. They're the main characters. They're the focus of the movie for once. And when they show up, one of the girls takes a picture of Ed's son, like it's, you know, that one famous picture from the Dust Bowl, the 30s, you know, and they keep making comments here and there just about how backwards these people must be. And they're just very dehumanizing in general. So later on in the movie, when Joel kills this kid and then just runs away, it's a little more believable that he can write off any evil he did to these people because he's kind of dehumanized them up until this point.
Right. They have no hospital. They have nothing out here. There's no infrastructure. So why does it matter? Right. My life matters. I have something ahead of me. It is believable. I think that these characters, the young ones, mind you, they're like clearly 30.
Oh, yeah.
they play teens, but they're like clearly 35. Like half of them are balding. But yeah, it does make it believable, you know, and what I do like about it is that, yes, Joel is clearly the evil one here. He's clearly the one without the moral compass. But you have some interesting character development in the group, right? You've got the brother who, you know, wants to love his brother like any of us do and sees his brother doing these terrible things and he wants to stand by him. And, he kind of tries to be his better half in many ways. And that's interesting to watch. He does Joel has kind of an NPC girlfriend that just floats around and is dressed comedically, like completely differently from the rest of the group, which is kind of funny. But there's some stuff there that I think is actually worthy of note. And maybe I'm too hard on them. I do think, who's the one Bible thumper in the group? I don't even know her name. It's not even important to mention their name. They're all fodder at the end of it.
I think her name's Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy is a clown. Yeah, whatever. Clown character, ridiculous. But you kind of want that in one of these movies. It cuts the tension. I mean, a kid dies, right? I can count the movies that we've covered. We've covered some heinous stuff, and I can count the movies on maybe one hand that actually kill a kid. So for me, that's why I think this movie has a cult following. The fun creature, the, at times kind of goofy performances help cut into the real tension that there is here. And so that's, I think, ultimately what makes me enjoy this movie. I don't think I love it as much as you do, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. And I think there's some good stuff.
No, I appreciate this movie a lot. The character of Joel and Ed Harley kind of mirror each other, because once Joel kills his son, that's an accident. And it is an accident. And who knows what would have happened if he copped to it and didn't escalate things from there. But this movie is kind of, I said it was contemplative earlier, but it's kind of like, it toys with the idea of like our actions and our reactions and maintaining like a good moral compass, even in the face of tragedy, in the face of like really scary, horrible, death or something just unthinkable happening in life. And Joel, instead of saying, I killed your son, I'm sorry, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you, I'm going to own up to it. Instead of doing that, he escalates it. He says, I was drinking, they're going to arrest me, they're going to throw me in jail forever, I have to go. So he gets in his car, drives away from the scene immediately. Then he starts doing stuff like preventing other people from getting help, from calling, the police or an ambulance or anything, because he doesn't want them to show up and arrest him. Then he ends up, by the end of the movie, trapping all of his friends in this cabin, locking them up so they can't escape and tell on him, basically. And he just gets worse.
He cuts the phone line.
Yeah.
Like a kidnapper.
Exactly. He gets worse and worse and worse. Meanwhile, Ed, who we've seen as a good man and is just a loving father, he also, this tragedy happens, and instead of trying to work through it, trying to bury his son, he escalates it as well. He goes to this witch. He makes deals with the devil. You know, he sells his soul and he conjures this demon instead of backing down and trying to face tragedy head on.
God, that's so well put. And you just reminded me of a scene that I thought was really, it's a silent moment, really. But Lance Henriksen, Ed goes to visit this witch, of course, because he's recalling what he saw as a young boy. And we are led to believe he's probably heard stories in these woods about this revenge demon, right? And when he goes to the witch, he takes the boy's body. He does first try to see if there's anything that she can do. There isn't, of course, anything that she can do, because then we wouldn't have Pumpkinhead. But when he comes to terms with the fact that he wants revenge, and he tells her he wants revenge, he's so blind in his rage. There's a great moment between the two where he reaches for his son, who is now dead, limp on a table. And she goes, "No, leave him." And it's the reaction of, I got to leave my son here, right? And he does it. And you can tell it bothers him that he has to leave the son. He doesn't know what will come of his son's body. He is obviously foregoing, burying his boy and giving him that peace because he is driven so mad by his rage. And, I love what you said about that juxtaposition between the two characters. And I thought that scene was really, really special because it sets it in stone for Ed. He is going down this path and he's in too deep.
Yeah, and he pretty quickly regrets what he does. I think at the first kill, we learn that Ed and Pumpkinhead are kind of like linked. And so Ed can feel when Pumpkinhead kills someone, and he kind of sees it happen and knows it happens and knows it's gruesome and evil. And that feeling immediately shows him, like, this is wrong. I have to stop this. And so for the rest of the movie, he's trying to stop this. And during his regret, he starts driving towards where he thinks Pumpkinhead is, and he has this, like, vision, this dream of his dead son sitting up and saying, "Daddy, what did you do?" I really like that because he does kind of put his son on the back burner to his revenge. And then when he finally thinks about his son, what would his son want? What would honor his memory a little better? Instead he leaves the body with this witch. And I immediately was thinking, like, this witch wants this body for evil purposes. Some spell definitely requires child parts, I couldn't imagine leaving him there, but he doesn't care about that anymore. He cares about revenge until he realizes that's not what he wants, and that's not going to make him feel better, and that's not going to make anything right. But I guess we keep talking about it. How great was this witch? I love this witch so much.
No, the witch is awesome. The witch is fantastic. You know what I find really appealing about this movie is it gives you classic horror elements, big demon monster, warty old nasty hag witch living in a nasty shack in a gross marsh in the woods, but it drops it all in our backyard. It's not Texas, okay, but it feels familiar. And I love that. And there's really interesting folklore. I guess witches do have American roots, right? And they're important to the history of this country. I mean, shoot, we learn about it in school. But nonetheless, it's just so fun to see. It gives me the same feeling that something like Salem's Lot gives me, where you drop a almost Dracula-esque classic vampire into small town Maine. And you get to feel that horror hits you on a more familiar level. And I feel like we never see American warty witches. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. For whatever reason, I just the witch sure is one that comes to mind. But beyond that, they're just kind of this mythic sort of foreign thing relegated to Macbeth or something else. I found that very, very appealing. Something about an Appalachian witch just really worked for me. And honestly, really good makeup.
Yeah.
Really nice performance. super gross, super chilling, fun character. I don't know who that actress is, but she did a really good job.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said about like the witch in the real world, basically in a world we can imagine, and it feels a little closer, feels a little more believable. Like this is one of the scariest movie witches I've ever seen. Maybe the scariest movie witch. I would say the witch in The Witch is scarier, but you don't really see that witch, so I'll give it to this one. You never see witches in movies, like a classical, this is a evil hag that casts spells. Because I guess it is a little too foreign. It is a little too, like, maybe even goofy. It's a little too Halloween costume at this point in our world. You know, we associate it with Green Face's Wizard of Oz. But this is like a scary, creepy witch. Her cabin feels cursed. She feels cursed. It feels like your soul is being hurt to be in the scene. She is scary, and like just looking at her, the cryptic weird things she says and the spells she just knows and the forgotten evil ancient magics that she just somehow knows. It feels like she really is in league with the devil, and she sold her soul and is trying to take people with her to hell. Like, she's a real witch. This is the thing people were afraid of when they were burning people in Salem. This is like the penultimate witch for me. And you never see that in movies.
No, you really don't. Underutilized, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And you know what's really cool? There is this, and this is coming from me. We live in an urban metropolitan area, and a lot of Americans live in urban metropolitan areas. And so you see the rise. Are you familiar with the YouTube channel Soft White Underbelly?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, they cover areas and people from areas that kind of go undiscussed or they're not given a platform. And there's, of course, the famous folks from West Virginia that are all that inbred family. And I mean, I know this feels like kind of a stretch, but we can see ourselves in those teenage characters because a lot of us are city folk, even if we're not the most city folk, right? And we're not all evil and we don't kill kids with dirt bikes. There is a level of unknown that comes with a lot of rural areas in this country. And Appalachia is like still, obviously has so many infrastructure issues and is so unexplored because the wilderness there is so vast that it's just like, I buy it. And of course, there's so much ridiculous stuff in this movie. Pumpkinhead existing is fun. But you buy that, like, this lady lives there. She's just the witch of the area, and people know her, and they fear her, and they don't mess with things of that nature. And I just love that stuff. I really, really do. Again, the notion that this is happening in your backyard, very fun.
Yeah, well, at this point, he summons Pumpkinhead. The way Pumpkinhead is summoned is grisly, too. You have to go to the old Pumpkin Patch Cemetery, which is so cool when he goes there. It's really exaggerated, cartoony Halloween. There's evil pumpkins growing in a cemetery, and then there's this huge, like, cairn built in the center of the cemetery, and in that we find what Ed needs to do the Pumpkinhead ritual, and it is the deformed corpse of some kin of the witch. She says her deformed kin used to be buried in shame, like in unmarked patches in the Pumpkin Patch Cemetery, which is like just a bunch of evil pumpkins grow there, and they truly look like evil pumpkins, and it's behind the actual cemetery. So this deformed corpse is bled on by Ed and also bled on by his dead son. And then it right in front of our very eyes grows from this tiny desiccated corpse into this 8-foot tall Pumpkinhead. And it's a costume too. It's not a puppet. And an 8-foot tall costume is crazy. I don't know how they made this work. I don't know if he's on stilts or if it's entirely a perspective thing. But he is imposing and he is scary. And he is super really cool looking too, isn't he?
God, so cool. And I thought for sure, just from like the promo material I saw before watching the movie, when you're about to rent something and you see the trailer and whatever, the clips. I was like, oh, is that claymation? Is it stop motion? When I found out it was a real suit, I was blown away. And it shows because it looks so good. I mean, it looks like something that you can touch right there. And of course, when I found out it's a suit, no kidding. Of course, that's why it looks so damn good. And all the sets look so good. That pumpkin patch, one of the coolest sets I think I've ever seen ever. All that low hanging fog. I have no idea how they did it. Just an incredible scene, really, when he's digging up that body and the ritual begins. Everything about it.
Yeah, Pumpkinhead's so cool. He's played by Tom Woodruff Jr., who is one of these actors that's always the monster, you know, like a Doug Jones type guy. I think this was one of the movies that kind of made him big, or like one of his earliest movies. Before this, he was in the Monster Squad, and he's in this. And then after that, he had a pretty big career being the guy in the monster suit. He's in multiple Alien movies, like a lot of Alien movies as the alien. And he's also the gorilla from Zookeeper.
Wow.
So that too. And Pumpkinhead. His best role. Pumpkinhead or the gorilla. They're kind of neck and neck for me.
Yeah. Zookeeper definitely takes it for me. But
he's also...
You always need these genetic freaks around for the monster movies. God bless them. I say genetic freak with love also.
Of course. He's 6'2", so he's not like inhumanly tall or anything crazy like that. But
oh, so not like Doug Jones.
No, not like Doug Jones, but like I don't know, he does a good job. And I mean, this suit looks impossible to be inside of. Like, I really don't know how they squeezed a man in this, but he's doing it and he's moving around. Something really cool about Pumpkinhead is that you see him walk. And that's something in earlier horror movies and like these practical low budget movies where we have kind of complex monsters like this, a lot of times you don't see their legs just because it's kind of hard to make them move all their limbs and their face and then also have them walking. But here you see his full form. You see him walk in stride, and he has these really weird, thin, kind of backwards looking legs. And you get to see them used. And that's like a articulation you don't normally see with monsters. And I really appreciated how you got to see his full form so much.
Oh, you see him a lot. Yeah, it was shocking for me. That's what I'm telling you. I didn't think there was any way it could have been a suit. It just kind of left me aghast because we really did see a lot of him. And, you know, not all the shots work that well. He's got this really long tail that he uses as well. Some of that stuff is goofy. It doesn't really happen in frame when he's using it. The action, I mean. But all the shots where you see Pumpkinhead, especially in that graveyard setting with all the fog around him and the gloomy sky behind him, it's stuff I'd want to frame. It's so cool. You know, just really phenomenal work. And of course, all the credit to Stan Winston. You know, this is a guy that his career is effects like this. Jurassic Park is still considered one of the best looking movies when it comes to creatures and their design and their believability. To this day, people still use it as a metric for effects in movies. So I'm not shocked that everything looks so damn good in this movie.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, for a B movie, too, like, can't keep reiterating enough how, like, scraped together this movie was, and yet how solid it looks. It's really consistent in its look. There's no part that, like, oh, well, the suit's cool, but the rest of the movie looks bad, or this scene is super cheap looking, or whatever. It feels very consistent with the, like, production quality, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe just for you, very niche and weird fact is, you know, they go to Mr. Wallace, the other guy that lives around the area that Ed kind of is neighborly with, and he has like a bunch of kids. His grandson is the kid who actually tells Ed where the witch is, and he becomes a character later on that kind of helps these people defeat Pumpkinhead.
Recognized him from something.
What, that kid?
Yeah, where's he from?
Oh, I don't know. No, I'm not about to tell you about that kid.
Oh.
One of the random children, you know, he has like 15 kids living in this tiny cabin, but one of the random kids is Mayim Bialik, who's in The Big Bang Theory. So it's
Wow.
cool, I guess.
Shout out. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's very left field.
Good for him.
But it's her.
Good for
It's
him.
Sheldon's girlfriend.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she's just one of the random kids in this movie.
I didn't realize that was her name. I know the actress.
Yeah, you know her face if you see her.
I watched way more of that show than I'd like to admit. So
I think everyone in the world could say that.
yeah, that's true.
But
That's true. My mother would stand by it as still probably a very good show.
well, good. If anyone asks me about her, I'll say, "Oh yeah, I know her from Pumpkinhead."
That's awesome. Yeah.
A background child in Pumpkinhead.
Her Pumpkinhead was some of her best work. In my opinion.
Well, yeah, maybe. I assume. I like the other is the grandson who kind of helps defeat Pumpkinhead and kind of it's just like this. I want to say Huck Finn-esque kid that like shows everyone around and knows where everything is. So I think in this movie he's like 25.
Wow. Shout out.
He's kind of like boyish faced, but like I could kind of tell. I was like, they keep referring to him as like boy, and his dad's like get in the cabin, do as you're told, boy. But like he's obviously like in his 20s to me.
Huck Everlasting.
Yeah, he's young looking. They like rub dirt all over him. He's this like potato sack wearing dirt child.
They're all so filthy
They're
and
so
covered in
dirty.
potato sacks. And I can't tell if it's just like a bad depiction of them or if like people really just live in the mud out there.
It might be a bit of both. This movie is very exaggerated in everything it does, It's very kind of cartoony with its, I don't know, spookiness. That's something I absolutely love about this movie, too, is they never say it takes place in October, I don't think. They never say that it's Halloween or anything. It does not explicitly have anything to do with Halloween. But it's Pumpkinhead. It's got an evil pumpkin patch. It's got a witch. And it's like really one of the penultimate Halloween movies because of all that to me. And so the typical like kind of cartoony, exaggerated spookiness of Halloween, I think really is reflected in the aesthetic of this movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For me, like, if you're going to have a horror movie in the background of a Halloween party, this would be a solid pick. Also, Trick or Treat, obviously a solid pick. But this is perfect. It's got all the markings. Yeah. Spooky setting.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about a few of the kills if you want, or we could just talk about the ending.
Well, the kills are probably, in my opinion, the most disappointing thing.
I think I could, I think I can agree with that.
I wanted to see more gnarly revenge killing, which makes me sound like a psycho. But you know what I'm getting at.
Yes.
They build up this revenge saga that's happening, right? There's this evil that's being done, and that Ed just went too far. But there really isn't any of that visceral killing. I mean, I suppose it is visceral in nature, right? There's a lot of dragging and a lot of lifting and a lot of throwing because Pumpkinhead is such an imposing creature that it can just overpower anyone.
Oh, I think half of all the kills somehow involve Pumpkinhead lifting them up by the head.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's silly and it's disappointing. It's not my favorite part of the movie, but I think it speaks to this film that it holds you and keeps your attention without being a bunch of torture with Uberfest. So I guess it's a gift and a curse in this movie. I think it's reasonably well done. They do reward you with Joel being probably the most on-screen death. I mean, you get to see him die more than you get to see anybody else die, I guess. And so that's cool because they do build to that. But even that for me is a little anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's. I called it a slasher earlier, and it's set up like a slasher. It has a monster killing a group of teenagers one by one. Like, that's the classic slasher formula, but it's not really a slasher. I kind of hesitate to call it that because it's more of like this moral revenge parable. It's much more story driven. It's the story's the focus. The kills are secondary. So I think it can get away with not having the craziest kills. I give it a pass on that, but I do agree with you that they're kind of underwhelming for the most part. Pumpkinhead also, I like that he's He's sadistic. He's knowing. He's obviously conscious, despite the fact that he doesn't speak. He laughs an evil laugh sometimes. And another way I don't want to call him a slasher villain is because, you know, in a typical slasher, they pick people off one by one by one. No one notices at first until it's too late, and then there's only a handful of people left alive. In this one, he kills, I think, 2 people before anyone else knows. That one Bible thumper girl, I think her name's Maggie, she runs back and starts praying because she thinks she saw the literal devil. And she saw a demon. She really did see a demon, so I understand. But she gets killed next. She's outside in the woods. Pumpkinhead grabs her and has her, and he just gets her, and you don't know what happens to her. But the next scene is everybody kind of arguing inside the cabin, trying to figure out what's going on. And then at the window of the cabin, her face is pushed into the window, and it's being held by this giant hand. And Pumpkinhead's like smearing her face on the window, like making sure everybody sees that, oh yes, I'm a monster. I caught your friend and I'm going to kill her. And he pushes her face through the window and that kills her, I guess. Kind of lame, but I do like that Pumpkinhead isn't picking them off one by one sneakily. You know, he wants them to know he's sadistic. He's a demon. He's a revenge demon. And I kind of love that about him. I love the personality he has, despite the fact that he kind of otherwise would just be a mindless monster. But they do go out of their way to show you that, no, he's like a thinking creature. And he really is evil in his heart. None of the kills are very noteworthy, though. I do agree with you.
I'm glad you brought that window kill back to my attention, because that one is pretty gruesome. But did you notice in the kill that I guess they didn't have a glass budget because they just cut to her being through the window? They never.
I did not.
Oh, dude, hilarious! I laughed out loud. I thought it was so funny, and yet it speaks to the fact that you didn't notice it because it's still pretty fun. But Pumpkinhead's personality is cool. Top 10 creature. Slept on.
I wonder how much the marketing kind of promoted this as a slasher movie, or maybe just how much audiences perceive this as being a slasher movie. Because I know this movie spawned a franchise, and I wonder how much of the later films are just slasher movies. I think they are all like that. This is one of those franchises, I think, I'll compare it to Hellraiser, that like the first movie's great. It's a B movie, though, and the subsequent movies just cannot hold any water.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work as a franchise. It could, but all the subsequent movies are cheaper, less cared about, less funded, and I'm not probably going to watch any more of them. I think Hellraiser's like that, too. Like, Hellraiser 1 and 2 are watchable, and then Hellraiser 3 onward is like, man, they're just making movies for the purpose of making movies to air at 3 a.m. on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, it spawned sequels, it spawned a video game, it spawned a comic book franchise. None of it really took off. I think you're right. This isn't a sequel maker for sure. I think what this movie needs to be relevant again is the Evil Dead reboot treatment. You know, give it a young director, a nice budget, crazy effects. I guess in that movie, the effects aren't crazy, but like all the raining blood and that stuff, the practical effects were fantastic. Give them that. Let them run wild. Make Nick Cage Ed. And we've got a hit. We've got a hit.
Well, I don't even think they need to remake it, because at the end of the movie, we see the witch burying that desiccated corpse again. And you think, okay, well, she can perform the spell again. Someone else can summon Pumpkinhead again. And so it's kind of open-ended. You know, there could be other movies. There could be sequels. I am 90% certain, though, that in the second movie, Pumpkinhead is spawned because the witch is killed. Like, someone hits her with a car or something. I don't know how she dies. But I know someone just kills her.
Fine.
Yeah, and then that kind of ruins it.
Give it the Halloween 2018 treatment.
Yeah.
Completely disregard all the sequels. Put Nick Cage in it. He's out there. I don't know what happens, right? Some sort of tragedy. He hears whisperings, grumblings of Ed, the story. Maybe he hears the Misfits song. He finds out that the witch is still there. Now we get an even grosser, older witch. But it's the same witch. Boom. Pumpkinhead 2.
Yeah,
Or Pumpkinhead. It'd be Pumpkinhead 2023.
Exactly. Pumpkinhead X.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know.
Ooh.
No, I'd love this movie if Nick Cage was in
That's
it.
when he goes to space.
No, you're right. Summon him in space. It could be a good movie. I do hate to see that nothing's being done with this, because it really could be a rebooted slasher, a whole franchise, and I'd eat it up.
Oh, yeah.
In this era of kind of like reboot renaissance, I'll call it. Like, why not give it to Pumpkinhead? Pumpkinhead's great. Pumpkinhead, like, it might not be like the most lucrative franchise to bring back, but it would draw in a crowd. I know it would. I know there's enough people that like this. I know that the cult following is like kind of big, like for a cult B movie. And I know there's an audience for this. And I'd love to see it happen. And I will be in that audience eagerly if it ever does happen.
Hopefully one day, my friend.
Yeah, I hope
Hopefully
so too.
one day.
I hope so too.
We'll have our Coke Ices Pumpkinhead on the big screen.
I'm a white cherry girl.
That's true. You are a white cherry girl.
I'm glad you watched this. Did you watch it?
I'm also glad I watched it.
Yeah.
Did I watch it with?
Did you watch it with Kelly?
Ask that again. I did. She liked it too.
Oh, good.
I will say this. The only reason I don't think I like this movie as much as you do is, I mean, honestly, I don't know. It probably just comes down to a lot of it wowed me, but a lot of it made me go, eh. And it's really not the special effects fault or anything like that. It's just when you watch this in today's environment, right, where we kind of we constantly see Hicks versus city people now. That's like a big thing. It's been a big thing for a long time. I don't know. It had a lot of fun moments for me, but I groaned a lot too. And I guess it just comes down mostly to the characterization. And though there was a lot of good stuff there too, yeah, it's not like movie of the year for me, but it's certainly very fun, very, very fun. I think talking to you has made me more excited about this movie, and I think I might have to give it a rewatch.
Oh, good. That makes me happy to hear. Yeah, I think I just really appreciate this movie.
That's fair. There's a lot to appreciate in this movie. I mean, there really is. And I think it's good.
Yeah, and October, like, perfect time to watch this movie. It has set the mood of the season. It's particularly good weather too when I watch this, and for the rest of the week it has been. Like, it really feels like fall, and for me, like, what brought that in was Pumpkinhead, so it rung in the fall, run in October.
Well, there you go. It's shaping up to be a nice October. So,
oh yeah,
thank you, Pumpkinhead.
Thank you, Pumpkinhead, and thank you, Adrian, for joining me.
What a segue. Yes.
Yes.
That's all.
All right, well, thank you everybody for listening. Goodbye.